You know where my confidence came from? My father.
Yeah.
My dad was on the opposite side. And I was his son coming into a business, and I spent a decade plus hounding my dad. Now, what I learned from that is, just like I know that in many areas that don't come natural to me, for example, if you asked me right now on the podcast, Gary, can you become a better singer? I'd be like, of course. I can become a dramatically better singer. I can take it seriously mentally. I can hire a voice coach because I can afford it. I can practice every day. And in 3 years, I could become a much better singer. Can I become Beyonce? No. And what happened was, Justin, watching my father, and then subsequently the last 20 years, 25 years, watching people that are very close to me evolve, and then watching my own self evolve in an area where I really struggled, which was, believe it or not, stick with me here, candor. I'm incredibly candorous as Garyvee in my content. I was incredibly visceral to conflict, which made me incredibly not candorous as Gary Vaynerchuk, the executive, which created macro entitlement in my organizations and created vulnerabilities with my direct reports that I wanted to be different about in my 40s, and have gone through this incredible journey on standing up what I call kind candor, which has been a missing ingredient in my career. And in the last 2 years, I think a lot of things have exploded for me in a positive way professionally on the back of me starting to evolve on something that doesn't come natural to me. My mom doesn't have it either, so she didn't instill it. And thus it was a vulnerability. And I can't believe how much further down the path I am. Same with my physical health. 38 and a half years of garbage around muscle gain, but least natural thing. I have a workout later today. I'm like dreading it every day. I've worked out every day for 6 years and still dread it, but fought through it. And what that did was give me the confidence that the kid or the grown up on the other side of that TikTok or that Facebook post or this podcast. And it's why I think I give a good interview. People are like, man, you give a really good interview. I'm like, it's because I'm desperate right now that there's one person listening to this. And I know what kind of inspiration you are to so many. So I'm imagining who's listening. And I know my name is this week's guest. So I'm imagining who's listening. And what I'm trying to do here in our 45 minutes is, can I get one person to self-reflect, to become a little more self-aware, to feel a little less scared to tell themselves the truth, and then move them. When you realize that when you're lying to yourself and you're trying to hide something, that if you're really good at it, you're gonna trick 98% of the losing players on earth, the other insecure. And I don't wanna call them losers, but other people that are not as emotionally intelligent. One thing I've told a lot of friends when they're faking the funk, which means when you're faking it, you're anxious.
Yep.
Right? You're subconsciously always waiting for the imposter syndrome to get cloaked. And what I've been trying to tell people is look, you're only tricking the other insecure and unhappy. When you're tricking, you're actually losing with the 2% that you want to win with.
Yeah. Yeah. People that truly confident can see through that.
Correct. And so there's a lot of kids doing damage to their personal brand. And by the way, all that personal brand is the slang term for reputation. A lot of people hate that term. And I always laugh. I'm like, what about reputation? So I like that term. I'm like, good. Don't call it personal brand anymore. This is just reputation at scale. So how do I think about it? I think about speaking to its truth, engaging with people, suffocating excuses, trying to really, 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 I work on a lot of my people I most care about of, please, please, please don't point fingers, please point thumbs. If you can get into looking at yourself, when you feel somebody else is in control, you're super vulnerable. And when you're in the index finger game versus the thumb game, you're extremely vulnerable because then you don't feel in control. And when you don't feel in control, you feel helpless or manipulated. And it's a really sad state.
When you give up your agency and you're saying the world is happening to me instead of I'm in control of my own experience. Because
there's nothing more true to me than believing the world is how you see it. Because I have two very distinct sides of my family. One is grounded in cynicism and one is grounded in optimism. And that extremity, and by the way, extreme on both sides. I wouldn't call the optimism delusional, and I wouldn't call the cynicism blind, but my family's family tree is pretty close to blind cynicism and delusional optimism. And that's how I think I became me, right?
Speak more on that, yeah.
I have an extremely optimistic mother and an extremely cynical father. And their sides of the family played out that way too. And it just gave me a huge perspective on life. Like every situation, I could literally see the opposite. Like I live life and why I think I'm balanced by literally seeing the world through both sides of the family's eyes. I could see every situation and be like, my dad thinks that kid's gonna steal. My mom's gonna think that we can reconcile him. And so like everything I look at, the reason I think I've not gotten into trouble from overextend myself and lost is I'm too practical. I see the wrong in everything. But I choose the right in everything. I see the wrong, but I choose the right.
Was it always that way? Or did you train yourself to kind of embrace the optimism side?
I was always naturally optimistic, but then when I started spending time with my father in my teenage years at the liquor store, when he's like, the employees are gonna steal, the customer's gonna steal. It was just that immigrant shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I used to blame him, and then I got older and realized, oh no, I'm so wrong. My dad was born in a country where that was true. In a communist country, everybody stole everything because the black market was the country. And so I had to become more empathetic. But nonetheless, yes, it was always that way. However, in where you're going with the series of your questions, I believe in osmosis. How do I teach people? By talking about it 24/7. What you put in your ears becomes your truth.
For sure. So actually one thing I wanted to touch on that you talked about just now was, you're doing a lot of things that you don't like, right? Like working out every day. You worked out every day for 6 years and you don't even like working out that much, right? Or embracing that feeling of, kind of being candor in your personal life or, behind the non-social media life, right? Like, when it sounds like maybe
in my one-to-one versus, candor's easy when I'm talking to the world because I'm not talking to an individual human.
Right.
Be accountable. Stop taking, my favorite one, stop taking money from your parents in your 20s and watch your life get happier. Very easy for me to put on Instagram and TikTok, but I know people who are 27 that are friends of mine that are doing that, and it's hard for me to say that to them.
Right, because there's that conflict avoidance, that's kind of natural. And so how do you motivate yourself? You don't have to do anything you don't want to anymore, right? You're successful. How do you motivate yourself to do those things, right? That was something that, similarly, I embraced much later in life, in my 30s. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff that I hate doing, that doesn't come natural to me. How do you keep motivated to do those things and make those changes?
By two things. By doing them around the things that are important to me, that are logically important. So, I always say, if I brought 1,000 people into the room and asked them the following question about me, hey, do you think it's a good idea that Gary ate better and worked out every day versus what he's doing, which is he's not? I'm gonna lose 1,000 to 0.
Yeah.
And the market is always right. As much as I want to trick myself, that's that. So there is no doubt. I don't want to live with regret, Justin. Regret scares me. And even though working out doesn't come natural, I know at 68, 72, and 79 that it was too on my mind and I was too woke to it, that if I didn't do anything about it, that I would really sit with regret. And I didn't want that. I didn't want the last 20 years of my life having that pit in my stomach that, the fuck was the matter with me? Of course, that excuse that I didn't have time, I was too, but that's full of shit. You have enough time for everything. So I just pounded myself with that combo until I finally figured out my unlock. And by the way, on the record for other people that have been fortunate enough to be able to afford this, mine was I'm more accountable to others than I am to myself. So I hired a full-time trainer who's just for me, travels with me, is my guy. That's his career. And now I don't want to let him down. I don't want to let Mike Vacanti down. So it made it easy. Number two, just is, again, who I am as a man. It was too obvious to me that if I asked 1,000 people and said, you've watched my whole life, was I right in this situation with these 57 things I can think of? 900 of them would say no. And that killed me because I love my emotional structure. And so what that was grounded in, Justin, was, is it okay to say to Justin, who was my direct report, everything's awesome, you're gonna do it, try to build him up, and then out of nowhere say you're fired because I wasn't able to give him critical feedback along the way, and then blame him for not picking up on the social cues? And the answer is those 1,000 people would have said, 900 would have said you're wrong. 100 would have given me the excuse I had, which is he was delusional, he deserved, right? And once I realized that, I said, I can't do that. I have to change that. Oh shit, I have a problem with candor. It's hurting me in all facets of my life, except Garyvee. That's why everyone loves him. Fuck, I need to do this. And I started chipping away at it. And it's still hard.